Hi, and welcome to PIHRA Live Hangouts. My name is Crystal Smith, and I am a PIHRA support staff. You can find out more information about PIHRA at www.pihra.org. Today, I'll be interviewing one of our 2017 Legal Update speakers, Ms. Angela Reddock Wright. Angela has been an employment and labor lawyer for more than 20 years. After litigating employment cases for the majority of her career, she has transitioned her practice to focus exclusively on resolving employment and labor law cases through alternative dispute resolution processes as a mediator and arbitrator. Additionally, she conducts independent workplace investigations, serves as an expert witness on employment and labor law cases, and is an authority on Title IV, sexual assault, hazing, and bullying cases. Ms. Angela, it is a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you have a pretty impressive expertise. Can you tell our audience a little more about you and the work you do in the field?
So I am a 20-plus year practicing employment and labor law attorney. I started my career out of law school. I graduated from UCLA. And when I graduated, my goal was to get a job. The market was kind of soft at the time. And I thought I wanted to do entertainment law. So while I was in law school, all of my activities were focused on entertainment. I was involved in entertainment organizations. But as it turns out, I actually worked for an entertainment litigation firm during law school. But as it turns out, my first job when I graduated was with a boutique employment and labor law firm that represented employers in all aspects of employment and labor law litigation, from wrongful termination to harassment to discrimination. And that was just right around the time that some of the cases that have shaped how we conduct investigations today, like Farragher and Cotran, those cases had just come out not too long before my graduating from law school. And so it was at my first firm that I started to do investigations in addition to litigation. And from my first day at this firm, which was a spinoff of a bigger firm, I fell in love with employment and labor law, loved my bosses, got great training, and never looked back. I've been doing employment law ever since. And over the years have expanded my practice to include Title VII investigations, as well as hazing and bullying investigations and cases. About 5 years ago, I went out on my own, and after being a litigator for most of my career, I decided to focus exclusively on workplace investigations, as well as the other investigations I just mentioned, as well as mediating and arbitrating cases. At my core, I am a facilitator, and I'm someone who likes to work things out. So it was very natural for me to take the path of being committed to alternative dispute resolution and mediation and arbitration, and trying to work things out through alternatives other than litigation. So for me, the investigations, the ADR practice all work together to help employers and employees try to resolve disputes before they're actually faced with litigation. And of course, if an employer is faced with litigation, the investigation, particularly a quality investigation and a well-done investigation, helps to provide a defense for the litigation. And of course, most importantly, is from training to preventive measures and investigations, they really help employers to engender trust among their employees and to create an environment that lets employees know that the employer cares about the environment and cares what happens and is committed to preventing improper practices in the workplace. So that's why I do what I do. I love it. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Wow. Your expertise really is pretty extensive. That's amazing.
And sort of along my path, I've led a dual life. I've been a lawyer in terms of how I make money and able to take care of myself and my family. But I am equally committed to and passionate about community service and being involved and engaged in our political and government life. So I have served on numerous boards and commissions and throughout the state, throughout the city, and served a short term on the Los Angeles Community College Board of Trustees. And it was from my service on that board that I started work after I left in the higher education world, in the secondary education world.
Wow, well, I know I'm excited and honored to be speaking with you today, and I know our PIHRA audience has got to be thrilled to have the opportunity to listen to where you came from and where you are today. So while we're on the topic of where we are today and where we're going, can you provide an example of an innovation that you've seen in litigations?
In terms of investigations, yes. One of the great things that happened for me this past year, we're in the year 2016 now, um, is I was appointed to the Los Angeles County Equity Oversight Panel. And that's a panel of nine independent experts with employment law backgrounds and expertise, primarily employment law attorneys. Um, and we as a body independently review investigations conducted within the County of Los Angeles. And for those of you who may not know, the County of Los Angeles is the largest employer in the County of Los Angeles and perhaps in the state of California. Have I believe, over 20,000 employees or so. And so if you can imagine, there are numerous complaints that come forward, and those are investigated through the Department of Human Resources for the county. And the county, about 10 years ago, beginning with the LA County Sheriff's Department, developed this process to have every investigation independently interviewed by an expert panel. And in reviewing the investigations, we advise the county as to whether we think there are problems that need to be addressed. We meet with the managers as panels we divide ourselves the county divides us up into a panel of 3 at any given week. And we meet with managers to give them our thoughts and our opinions about whether there's been a violation of the county equity policy. And then we give them our thoughts about how to prevent such things from happening in the future if something improper occurred. And what I love about in the same process is built in an opportunity for mediation during the investigation. And so what I love about this process, and it's much more in depth than I have time to go into now, but it builds into everything that makes an investigation a quality investigation. There's an independent investigation within the county. There's an opportunity to mediate to see if a matter can be resolved without having to go forward and involve more resources from the county agencies. And then there's an independent panel, and we're giving our opinion about the investigation. We're also giving advice to try to help reduce such things and improper conduct from happening in the future. So it's definitely, whether you are a public sector employer or private or nonprofit sector employer, it's definitely a program that's worth taking a look at. I think I've only been on for this past year, but I think the county has seen a real commitment from employees wanting to come forward if they believe something is happening, as well as managers and supervisors. And there's a real commitment to investigate complaints that rise to the level of what the county calls an equity investigation. And then by having this independent panel, I think it shows an even stronger commitment to employees that the county is quite committed, very committed to ensuring that improper conduct is.
Wow. So, do you think that the work claims and investigations are going to possibly rise in 2017?
I don't hold a crystal ball, but if I had to make a prediction, if I were on Jeopardy or Wheel of Fortune or one of those shows that required me to make a prediction, I would say certainly. I think, not to be political or anything, but obviously our country is in the middle of a great transition, and yet it remains to be seen what the commitments will be in terms of the workplace laws and what the impact will be on people who have complaints and want to come forward with those complaints. So it's my sense that because of just the general aids that already exists in the workplace, for example, we're in December, as we're talking, today is December 5th. And since November and today, I've probably gotten, I want to say, at least 10 calls for possible new investigations. And I haven't been able to take on all of those because, we can only carry so much of a load. But just the calls that I've gotten have signaled to me that, unfortunately, still we're facing some challenges in the workplace. And I think with the transition that our country is going through, that is possibly going to create more anxiety, more angst, and that we may see people coming forward with more complaints. And then in a state like California, where we have our new regulations through the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing, which came out in April of this year, April of 2016, they really raised the ante in terms of reinforcing the state's commitment to the anti-harassment and discrimination laws and making sure that those types of complaints are investigated immediately. So I think if nowhere else in the state of California, which tends to be a leader, good, bad, or indifferent, but definitely tends to set a tone for the rest of the country or set a pace for the rest of the country, I think we're going to see more complaints coming forward in this coming year.
Well, while we're talking about new additions, can you highlight some of the requirements of the DFEH regulations as it relates to these investigations?
Right. So as I just indicated, the California Department of Fair Employment and Housing, which is our state agency that provides oversight and enforcement for the state's anti-discrimination and harassment laws, they came out with a new set of regulations on April 1st, 2016, which honestly, they're not necessarily new in terms of what they require, but in my opinion, they have raised the ante in terms of re-emphasizing and reinforcing the state's commitment and its expectation that employers will have a commitment to preventing harassment and discrimination in the workplace. And so what we see with the new regulations is what we've seen in much of the case law that exists around investigations and conducting investigations. So it's now codified through the DFEH regulations, but it essentially requires employers to issue updated policies, updated anti-discrimination and harassment policies, and anti-retaliation policies that are in writing. Most employers by this day and age already have written policies, but they have to enhance those policies to list all of the protected categories in the state of California. And we know that California leads in terms of the categories that are protected, with some of the recent protections being around sexual orientation and gender identification. It also requires that managers, it indicates that not only can harassment or discrimination occur between a manager to an employee or a supervisor to an employee, but that coworkers, employees, third-party vendors can be liable or the subject of harassment and discrimination complaints as well. It requires a much more extensive complaint process, at least one that's more transparent to both the complaining party as well as the subject or the responding party. It requires that process be fair for both sides. And I can say that in my experience of conducting investigations for numerous years, it's very clear that the complainant has rights, but what I think this new DFEH policy does, or regulation does, is it enhances the rights of the subject and the respondent as well, by saying that the investigation has to be fair and transparent, and that person ultimately has a right to ask questions and to request a fair and impartial investigation as well. It emphasizes the need to make the investigation confidential,
Mm.
but to state that it can only be confidential to a certain extent, meaning that, you know, the information discovered during the investigation has to be disclosed to the employer so that the employer can determine what next steps to take and what remedial action to take, if any. So those are some of the highlights, but again, in my opinion, it's not 100% new. I think it just through these regulations and through the commission or the advisory group that served to help bring these regulations about, what they did a great job of is really putting on paper what, you know, we as experienced investigators have been following and acknowledging for many years. So I think it's great that we now all have a document that we can look to and regulations that we can look to that enhance our practices and enhance what's expected in terms of the workplace.
Absolutely. So let's tie this all back into legal update. Why did you, someone of your level of expertise and skill and clearly in high demand, why did you want to speak at Legal Update 2017?
Well, PIHRA is the organization to speak at. So quite frankly, I feel honored that my proposal was accepted, and I've submitted in the past and have not been selected. So this year, when I got the email, I was just excited and honored, and I'm really looking forward to it. I love sharing my knowledge. I love working with most of my work is with HR professionals. And I teach a course at UCLA. I teach in the Human Resources program for UCLA Extension. So I spend a lot of time with HR professionals. And so whenever I get a chance to share my knowledge and my years of experience, and I see it as an opportunity to do my part to help create great big to do my part to help create better workplaces. So I am honored to say the least. I've spoken, as you indicated, for several different organizations, events, webinars, etc. But this definitely will rank among one of my higher opportunities and honors to speak. So thank you, PIHRA. I'm looking forward to it.
And our members will definitely be looking forward to you. So why do you think Legal Update is such an essential program for the HR community?
Because it gives us a chance in our community to start the year off on the right foot, making sure that we know what's expected, what happened in the prior year, what's in the pipeline, and to make sure that we are positioned and equipped to properly advise the organizations that we work with.
Wonderful. Well, this is going to be my last question for our interview. What do you want guests to take away from your session at PIHRA Legal Update 2017?
I want them to be clear about what the new laws and regulations are, not just with the DFEH regulations, but there have been some significant case law in the past year or two that are important to investigations. So I want them to be clear about the legislative updates and what's important in terms of enhancing their investigation practices at their workplaces. But part of why I like speaking and like speaking to other HR professionals is because I not only like to deliver the law and the statutes and the regulations, but I like to help make it relevant to what you do every day and practical to what you do every day. So mostly I want to help them dissect the new laws and regulations and determine what it means for them. And then I'll have a co-presenter, attorney Susan Woolley, who's also an experienced investigator. And we both serve on the Los Angeles County Equity Panel Oversight Committee. So we look forward to sharing our experience and an example of what we think is a great and innovative practice. One which you don't have to take on the entire program, but you can borrow pieces of it to enhance the work that your organization does around investigations. So definitely looking to share some innovations and ideas for growing and enhancing workplace investigations.
Well, thank you so much, Miss Angela. And my lights just turned off, so
It's getting you a message. It's saying it's time for you to go home.
What the building is trying to tell us.
Oh, yes.
Thank you so much, Miss Angela. It was a privilege speaking with you. I know I'm excited, PIHRA is excited, our guests are excited, and they know that you've been delivering for 20 years, and you are certainly going to deliver for PIHRA Legal Update. So
Thank you. Uh-oh, you've got put the pressure on here. I'm looking forward to it.
bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. See you in a few weeks, Pyra. I'm ready.